Now we are live. Hello, everyone, and hope some of you will be able to join as our conversation continues or catch the replay later. I'm Wendy Gordon. For those who don't already know, my Substack is Changing Lives, and it's about mental and spiritual health. I began publishing it in 2022. Before notes existed, before these lives were possible. So a lot has changed, and I am loving that I can now interact with people in real time and have wonderful conversations with fascinating people. And today's guest is Ren Powell. So I'm going to let her introduce herself and share a little bit about her Substack.
Okay. I'm Ren Powell. I have two Substacks actually, although they tell you not to do that. I have one called Finding My Bearings Now, which is focused on my cancer diary, an unedited diary, and another one called Dramatic Roots, which focuses on poetry and nature as metaphor and play scripts with some writing tips. Yeah, I started both about a year and a half ago, and I'm still floundering a little bit to figure out how I want to limit each one, the scope of each one, make sure that they have a clear focus and don't wander into meandering or musings.
I know that's a common struggle, and my Changing Lives Substack has certainly evolved as I've continued to write weekly posts and now do video posts instead and audio. Um, in fact, that's why I deliberately chose a broad topic like mental health and later added in spiritual health, because pretty much everything affects our mental and spiritual health. But I mostly share personal essays about my journey and suggest resources and practices that have helped me that I believe can help others improve their mental health. Um, and so I know that you do some of that too. And when we first talked about doing this live, you mentioned talking about ways to focus on the good things, even when life is really hard and lots of bad things are happening. So you want to share some more about that?
Yeah, I can start with what good things are, really. I think that maybe we live in a culture that expects wonderful moments of ecstasy continually, one after the other, every day, and that anything less is not good enough. And I think that is a unhealthy way to look at life. We do have beautiful, bright moments. We also have a lot of quiet moments that are wonderful and delicious if we let ourselves relax into them. Um, I have had a wild life. I'm going to start by saying a couple years ago, I had two exceptionally talented students who did a performance piece for me. Um, and it was called Surfing. And the entire point of the piece was that when you surf, you have to give up control. You have to commit. Once you are on the board, there is no going back. That's it. You just commit and see what happens. And you have to relax into it and give into it. There's no reason to panic. Um, and they use that as a metaphor for life. And I learned so much from that because I think, yes, that's what I've been doing, I think. Um, I have, let's put this, my mother did a non-custodial kidnapping, I think that's what they call it, when I was 6. And we were kind of hiding until I was 15 or so that we moved continually. So I was always the new girl on the block or the new girl at school, new girl in classroom. Um, and I learned to be comfortable with that, to always be comfortable on the edges, looking and finding good in what is, without feeling that I have to swim in it or be the center of attention or any of those kinds of things. It's just to give in and ride it.
I
And
think that is so powerful and such an important message. And So hard to do, at least for me. I am one of those people who wants to be in control, and not only of my own life, but I would love to control other people and what they say and do that affects my life in particular, or the world for that matter these days. But I also have to say, I used to live in Hawaii, and so I love metaphors of the ocean and surfing the waves. Although I was not a surfer, I was into snorkeling and diving. And but I have sea turtles are my spirit animals, and I have um, a wall hanging next to my bed that says, "Life is like the ocean. Waves will come and try to push you back to uh, where you started, but once you get past them, the whole ocean is yours."
Oh, that's wonderful. Yes. Yeah, I
And the
have.
ocean has always been my happy place, my sanctuary, if you will, especially the underwater world. If I could breathe underwater and live underwater and in an environment with coral reefs and awesome marine animals, I would be delighted. Do it in a heartbeat.
I have a very complicated relationship with water, but I do have a poem that tells the true story. My first kiss was underwater. Uh,
Wow.
and later, well, when I was 50, I decided I was going to learn to surf. Finally, I was going to get out there and do that. And we went a couple times. I was learning. I was getting I was getting my knees on it, not good at it. I was getting up. And then I had a blood clot and wound up in the hospital for 2 weeks with the thrombosis in my groin as a congenital thing that just suddenly popped up. Um, and then I had to take blood thinners for 2 years, so I couldn't do anything that would might bump my head or do anything like that.
Yes, of
That
course.
that got put on the back burner for a little while, uh, and then I got cancer.
Oh,
So it's been on the back burner for a little while too. Um, and when I lost all my hair with chemo, this is extensions, by the way. When I lost all my hair with chemo, I told the nurse I had this image of myself at 60. I was going to be that woman on the surfboard with her gray braid down the center of her back all the way to her butt. Um, and she just said, well, okay, give it a few more years. You'll be there. Yeah, 65, 66. So I haven't given up. Haven't given up. Um, and I think that's part of it also. The good is, okay, so I can't have it today, and it isn't, I'm not going to get it the way that I wanted, but I can still aim for it. Um, and if it comes, it comes. Or if I catch it, I catch it, I guess is a better way to say it.
yeah, and I think it's so important to focus on the journey and less on the destination, and focus on doing things that bring us joy. And yes, we have to find ways to support ourselves too, of course. But if we go into this, whether it's Substack or anything else in life, if we go into it expecting a specific outcome in a specific time frame, which I tend to do, I admit, we will almost always be disappointed and feel like we failed and the whole thing. And so I'm trying to get better at doing this because I love doing it, and figuring out some hodgepodge of ways to survive financially, but not giving up because I enjoy it too much. And there are lots of other reasons I do it. I'm more motivated by a desire to help others by sharing my painful experiences, challenges I've overcome, to help them overcome them, and learn to find and trust their intuition and their own answers, and kind of accompany them on that journey. So that is more important to me than making money, as long as I make enough to pay the rent and not be homeless and starve to death.
Yeah. I'm in a fortunate position. When I came to Norway, there was a misunderstanding by the school when I was forced to apply for a bunch of jobs so that I could get unemployment. And the school saw drama on my paperwork and thought that it meant creative dramatics, which is very different from drama as in text. studying Shakespeare, studying
Right.
Ibsen. Creative dramatics is a very different creature. Um, but because of that misunderstanding, when they interviewed me, they liked me, they hired me. And it was probably 3 months before we all realized I had no idea what I was doing, what I was teaching. I couldn't speak the language. Um, I learned to speak like a teenager because I learned to speak from teenagers. Um, and I learned about creative dramatics kind of on the way. So
What
I
an
still,
inspirational story, though, of being able to adapt that way and learn on the job.
I was so fortunate. I was so fortunate. And I thought I didn't really enjoy it. And when I studied theater in America, I remember them trying to tell me, "Oh, get your teaching degree, and you're going to need to get your teaching degree." And I was, "No way, no way. I'm not going to teach. I'm going to be an artist. This is crazy. No way." And I wind up teaching. And 8 years in, I quit, um, and I worked for Penn International, and was the women writers representative and the human rights representative for the Women Writers Committee. Um, so that I traveled a lot and I met a lot of amazing people. Um, and I also found out I missed teaching. Um,
Ah,
so I went back to teaching. I think I had taken 5 years off total, and have been teaching since then. I'm lucky that I like my day job.
mhm.
um, I enjoy it. And I have to remember then when I'm writing and so for example, look at Substack writers at work. When
Mhm.
I go in there and the conversation gets going and there's talks about entrepreneurs and all of these calls to action, and I remind myself, no, that's not why I'm here. I don't want to do that. I don't have to do it. Um, and that it's okay to just breathe and figure out how it's going to happen. Um, and and that's been going pretty well.
Good.
It
I will
has,
say, I since you mentioned writers at work, I am also part of that, and Sarah Fay is by far the best and kindest, most supportive Substack expert. Even if you don't want to make money doing it, today she had a live event that I attended called "The Relaxing Way to Grow" on Substack. And even though
oh,
her main goal is to help writers sustain themselves financially, she also it very much emphasizes it being fun and doing it, because you love it, and finding what works for you versus some growth hack or strategy that others teach. If you just do it this way, then you'll succeed. She is all about figuring out what works for you. And I love she uses examples from all different substacks by other people in different genres, and I have found that incredibly helpful and encouraging. But you're right, the primary focus is on this being your career or your main source of income.
yeah. But thank you for saying more about that. I wouldn't want anyone to think I was disparaging her work at all. I find a lot of it incredibly helpful. I just have to remind myself where I draw the line and what I, of course, want to make money. Who doesn't want to make money? I need to
Right.
retire someday. But
Right.
that the idea of um, being true to the kind of writing I want to do, which has never been writing for magazines. So
Yes.
um, that I want to use it as a platform that mirrors my books. That what people find if they buy one of my books, that's it will be what they expect.
So say a little bit more about your books and what they're about.
Um, yeah, I again have been incredibly lucky. When I first came to Norway, I met someone who worked at the theater, and I asked him if I could get some kind of volunteer position or something. And he suddenly said, "Oh, no, you need to translate this for me." So I wound up translating. I translated a lot of the really um, big Norwegian writers, including Jan Fosse. Um, and I did that for many years. And one of the men that I translated suggested, I said to him one day, "Oh, someday want to write a book." And he just looked at me deadpan and saw, "Okay, then, why aren't you doing it?" And I felt so stupid. I could not be. So I did. I wrote one, and he translated that. That book was about about my pregnancy and about moving from the United States and having a child in a different country in a different culture with the moon in a different position. Um, and then I wrote a couple. I'm very slow with books. They're about five years apart every book. And I found a different translator who translated the other five books that I have. They range different subjects. One is very political. When I was working with Penn, my last one I'm very proud of. It's about menopause, basically, and about falling in love as a mature woman, as someone going through menopause, dealing with the idea of what love means when you know you're going to die. And it was kind of prescient because I wrote it in part for my now husband as a Christmas present. And um, we were married, and then just a few months after, then he had to take care of me with the deep vein thrombosis with the blood clot, and then to take care of me all through cancer. And now it's he gets a break. I told him I wasn't going to be sick for another 10 years. I promise. And,
So your cancer's in remission then?
well, I have what they call no evidence of disease. So that I had 3 tumors in one breast. Um, all of them were small, and they were all estrogen plus. Um, so I had been on HRT, um, and the doctors and I talked about it. There's no way of knowing what caused my cancer. My mother did die of cancer a few years ago, of breast cancer, but I don't. We were estranged. I have no idea what kind of breast cancer she had. But the estrogen certainly had it helped it grow fast. Um, but they did the surgery, and um, I went through chemo and radiation. And at the moment, I am no evidence of disease and doing my very best, everything I possibly can to stop it from coming back. Doing an EU project um, that is about how exercise stops, or if it stops fatigue after chemo and radiation treatment, or whether it is on a gene that some women get horrible fatigue after treatment and others don't, and they're trying to figure out why.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm really glad to be able to take part in that and
Sure.
help. I've had no no discernible fatigue, um, so that I was fortunate. I found it early. And in Norway, I live in a pocket that has a cancer cluster. It's breast cancer and uh, prostate cancer and testicular cancer. And it is because those are hooked up to the BRCA gene. And the BRCA gene is what there's a lot of it here in this area because those people survived the plague
Hmm.
and came here and settled here. So it's very strange. The community here can trace their roots back to the Black Plague, and that's not what it's called in English, is it? Black Death,
Black
bubonic plague.
plague. Yeah.
Mm. They can trace it back to there, and that's why that gene is really prominent in this area. So they do all the research here, and because I live here, I got fast track treatment compared to many other places in the world where treatment I was done with treatment within 9 months. So,
Wow, that's wonderful.
mm,
And obviously, dealing with the thrombosis and later the cancer are pretty major, bad, if you will, or challenging circumstances.
Yeah.
So tell us more about the specific things you did or are doing now that help you find the good stuff in the midst of the hard.
Well, one thing is nature. I know it sounds like a cliche, especially women our age, right? But,
Yep,
uh,
it definitely is one for me too, a biggie.
yeah. But to get out in nature, I started learning about bird calls. There's a wonderful little app that identifies the birds and flowers. And I ran through chemo um, as best I could. Some days weren't very good, but I did so that I could get outside. Um, I think that that matters so much to put myself in context of the rest of the world. And there's nothing to achieve when you're out in nature except getting up the next hill, maybe. I'm not very competitive about hiking, so just getting there is good. I find things along the way. I ran a marathon once, and I stopped to watch a snake. So that's how competitive I am.
I can totally relate to that. Not the running the marathon part, to be clear. I am not a runner and probably couldn't be if my life depended on it. But or any other kind of athlete for that matter. But the walking in nature, I normally walk by myself and prefer it that way.
Yeah.
Partly because when I walk with my husband, he gets impatient. He wants to walk at a steady pace, and every time I see an animal or something pretty, I want to stop, especially the animals. I can spend 30 minutes watching a great blue heron to see if it catches a fish or just admiring its beauty. And or watching bunny rabbits chase each other or what's butterflies, squirrels, doesn't matter. And or sunsets and all the scenery. And so, yeah, nature is my happy place. Like I said, the undersea world being paramount, but that's not really possible here in Texas. I can go to the beach for the day, but it doesn't have coral reefs and cool marine life in the
Mm.
ocean. I can just relax and float on the waves, which is still nice, but not the same as being in Hawaii. Um, but yeah, we have a beautiful park with a lake that and just a path around it that I see great blue herons at pretty much every day reliably, and other animals as well. And nature is the one of two places where I can be fully in the moment for an extended period of time and be totally calm and relaxed and focused on my immediate environment because I never know what I'm going to see next or where I'm going to see it, how that animal is going to move, etc. And so it's just wonderfully calming and just so beautiful, and I'm awestruck. Um, and the other place, which may seem like a polar opposite, but is Bruce Springsteen concerts.
Oh, I heard
I
you
am a
talking about
huge
that.
I'm a huge fan, and I actually read a mental health book, Chatter, that mentions that experiences of awe aren't limited to nature. They can happen at Bruce Springsteen concerts. It specifically was mentioned, as well as admiring a painting in a museum and or reading great literature, whatever. And it's so true. And for me, the concerts are again about being fully in the moment, immersed in that environment. And they're also this beautiful community of diverse people where none of our differences matter, and there's kind of this instant connection. The one I was at in Phoenix last year, as I was leaving, that this young black guy high fived me and complimented my dancing and how much I was into the concert. And there was another woman there that her family was holding up a sign, and it was about she was 90 years old and this was her first concert, and just little things like that. And so yeah, it's that human connection or that connection to any living being like the animals in nature,
Yeah.
that yeah, is just so healing and powerful.
Yeah. I'm not, I've never been a group person. I don't like being in huge groups at all. But I like watching them. And I was going to say, I was at a concert last weekend, and it was a group that's getting ready to retire, the rock band from the 80s, and the audience was singing back,
Mm-hmm.
and I kept thinking they sounded so young. Everyone in the audience had gray hair, but they sounded so young when they were singing, and that just touched me so much. That I actually was sitting up and watching the
Hmm.
crowd.
Yeah,
But
at the Bruce Springsteen concert, there was a woman using a walker who was in the pit on the floor, and more power to her. That's just so awesome. And yet, there were also, families with very young children, some young enough to still be held in their arms with, earphones on to protect their hearing. But
mm,
yeah, and just young kids that were huge fans, and like I said, the whole gamut, intergenerational,
yeah,
intercultural, um, in every way diverse, and it's just beautiful. Um, but it's funny that you said about not liking crowds, because I normally do not either. That, in fact, that's probably the only situation I can think of where I would willingly be in a large crowd.
hmm,
Um, and and part of that is because I'm all about authenticity and meaningful substantive conversations. And so, like, cocktail parties or any other large group gathering is usually superficial chit chat about stuff I just don't care that much
yeah,
about, and so I don't have the patience for it.
yeah, same here. Yeah, I had a last fall. I have a friend who is about 80, and she wanted to go to a drag show, and she kept asking me, "Please, please come. I don't want to go by myself." And it was fabulous. It wasn't that I didn't want to go, but we
Right.
went. Um, and when it was over, uh, she was like a child for Santa Claus to go
Mhm.
get her picture taken with
Oh,
with the drag queen. It was so beautiful. And I think moments like that, I don't know if it's that I don't experience enough of them myself personally, but I get such joy when other people do. Me
yes.
watching that makes me happy. It makes me happy to see other people happy. I guess it's like watching goats. I watch goats when I'm depressed.
Uh,
Goats and puppies and
Yes, at the
people who
park,
are
I also,
happy.
of course, see other humans. Some are walking dogs, and some are kids that are, just so playful and joyful, either on the playground or rolling in the grass down a hill or whatever. And yes, that brings me joy as well. In
Yeah.
fact, I did another short Substack video about being at the park, and I walked past a family, and the mom bent down and picked up a piece of trash out of the grass, and her daughter, who was maybe 8 years old or so, looked up at her and said, "Mom, you're my hero." And that just touched me. But then it gets better. A few steps behind was the dad, and he had one of those like pincher grabber tool things, and so he was picking up trash, but not with his hands. And I was so inspired by that as I was leaving the park, I started picking up trash. And so, yeah, just, you never know. And again, those are small glimmers, moments of joy, in what could otherwise be a bad hard day. And
Yeah.
there are so many things like that. I've There's now some research that even if you can't be out in nature because of the weather or whatever mobility issues, just watching nature documentaries, um, videos, can be have benefits as well. And that's
Mhm.
true for me. I love to watch nature documentaries and learn more about the animals, or even just watch videos of them with music playing in the background, or just
Yeah.
the animal sounds themselves. Just so powerful.
I'm really lucky. We live a kilometer from the lake. And then there's a bunch of fields just nearby where I walk the dog. So we get lapwings here, and they're endangered. So every year it's a joy when the lapwings come. And they're such goofy looking birds, and goofy and elegant at the same time.
Mm,
And uh, we are 20 minutes from the beach and
mm.
about 20 minutes from the mountains. So
Oh, you
really
make me want to
lucky.
move there now.
And my
But
husband's a
doesn't it
pugger.
get very cold there? That would be my one drawback.
Not right here. Here the weather is a lot like Seattle.
Okay. So
So
you get a lot
yeah,
of rain, or?
we do. Yeah. But it's the Gulf Stream here keeps us from getting really cold. You have to go up further north for that. So
Good to
it's
know.
not bad. But it gets rather dark. Like in the winter, it's dark when I leave and it's dark when I come home at 3. So, um, and then summer, it it's light until it's 2.
Yeah.
So. And then you get about a half an hour of night, and then you get dawn.
Mhm.
So,
And do you get the northern lights?
very rarely. We
Oh,
have had them here, just a glimpse. We To get them really beautiful, we need to go up about halfway up the country to see them in all their full glory. But, yeah, it's it is beautiful nature here, though. We have a right next to the very famous Pulpit Rock. You've probably seen pictures of it if you've ever seen pictures of a fjord. It's that one. It's
yep.
a rock that juts out. We're right there, and the bolt that you can go stand on. I would not recommend it. You go stand on a bolt that's about I don't know, a mile. I have no idea how high it is. It's way too high. Um, that people hike up there. Um, so it, people are out in nature here all the time. Um, and I remember I had my best friend moved from Michigan to Boulder, Colorado. And in Michigan, she was very sporty and she ran marathons and she did all of this stuff. And she got to Colorado and she said, "I'm average." And I'm not even average Norwegian. So, no. But I was going to say my other practice, besides nature, is photography. Um, not uh, not ambitious photography, but snapshots. It started because I was taking pictures in around the lake of beautiful things, and then I realized I was framing it so that the train was not in the in the image. Just kind of cut the train out, and then I realized I can do that anywhere. That I can go downtown to the ugliest part of town and I can find something beautiful. It just has to fit in that little frame.
Yes.
And that's been a practice I've had. I don't know. I had it on Instagram. I'm no longer on any meta platforms at all. But I think I had it on Instagram for maybe 10 years, a long time. So I've just started that up again. It's not on the Substack though. Felt like the wrong platform for it. So it's just on my WordPress blog for now until it's on my website.
Yeah.
Um,
You could
so
always post some of the photos just on notes. I know a lot of us do that occasionally.
yeah, yeah, I should do more of that. The last night I posted a picture of my dog and he's banging on the door here. But that also helps.
I do
That
nature photography myself, and art, like if street art photos, or like you said, anything else beautiful that strikes my attention. But it's almost always photos of animals or flowers or sunsets while I'm walking at the park. Um, in fact, I just made a collage that I have hanging on my wall of my best nature photos, and it has the Aristotle quote: "In all things of nature, there is something of the marvelous."
Oh,
And
yes.
that is so true for me. Um,
Yeah.
Especially the great blue herons. They're, for whatever reason, they just especially enchant me. So,
Yeah. As I'm again, I love the herons. We have some, but for me, it's the lapwings. They have like a little hook in their elbow from like pterodactyl days, and
I am going to have to look up a photo of a lapwing when we're done now. You've got me very
they have like
curious.
a little curly hair. Yeah. Um. It's I they don't photograph well, but when I was going through the worst of the chemo, my husband and I would walk around that little tiny lake, I don't know, pond. Um, and the lapwings had come and they had nested. We saw them come as a couple, and then we saw the chicks, and then we saw the fledglings, and we watched them how they
Oh,
moved them around. Um, so, and we waited for them again this year to see if they come back. That's so
I see in
yeah,
the chat, Audrey says they have mohawks, kind of.
yeah, kind of with a little curly thing. So, yeah, that I don't know if if they're endangered everywhere or just in Norway. I'm not sure, but I do know they have them in England. I don't know if they have them in northern. America. They have, someone wrote to me the other day that, no, she was never going to be able to see a great tit. And um, I guess they make these really wonderful noises.
Mm.
And there's a website in Norway called Great Tits of Norway. Um, it's a very popular website until people figure out what it is. Um,
Yes, and
but
for those who aren't sure, that is a bird. It's not
it
the
is
slang usage of that for a breast.
no, no, no. It's a bird. Yes. There's blue tits and green tits, great tits, but they're very small birds, and have a very specific song, and they mimic other birds' songs. Um, and I was writing about, and a woman told me, she'll never be able to see one. They aren't in North America, and that surprised me. I keep forgetting we don't all have the same
Yeah.
birds. We don't have the.
So tell us a little bit more about the differences, because you did live in America for some time. How did you find that the adjustment from living in America to Norway?
Um.
What's different between the cultures?
Oh, I moved here. I was 27. Uh, and when I first came here, I couldn't, almost couldn't comprehend the stillness and the quiet.
Hmm.
Um, there were two television stations at the time. Grocery store had one kind of toothpaste you could buy. All this has changed now, but at the time, um, it was uh, it was really peaceful. My head was quiet for the first time, I think, in my life. That I didn't have the option to choose. I didn't have as much, what do they call that? Choice
Yep.
fatigue, or yeah, there wasn't anything like that. The police were not armed. They walked very cozy. They were in wooden woolen coats, and um,
And is that still true today?
no,
Okay.
no. Um, but I will say, I came here to have kids because I grew up in and out of Los Angeles, Las Vegas, all of those places, but mostly around Los Angeles at the time that there was the freeway killer. I knew
Mm.
one person who had been killed by him and one person who had been, probably, confronted by him. The police thought that he had tried. Um, I remember all of the killers there were. That was the highlight. I mean, how many killers in the 70s? It was just yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
and now it's the mass shootings that there's so many that we're like desensitized to them, and kids have to
yeah.
bring clear backpacks to school, and it's just been so normalized in our culture. And I live in Texas, where guns reign supreme, and our politicians talk about our God-given right to have guns, and they're not willing to even like raise the age to buy an assault rifle, much less outlaw them, despite the most of the school shootings being that's the weapon that is used. And we had a horrible one in Uvalde, and the shooter was an 18-year-old who, like, the minute he turned 18, went and bought assault rifles and all these bullets. And yeah, it's very I don't understand it. I never will.
Yeah. I saw Norway turn. I think I don't know. This is not a popular thing to say, but I feel that the stories we tell, we tend to emulate.
Hmm.
Um, and I felt that America's media influence in Norway made them also make movies that portrayed Oslo as a place that it was not. It's not New York City in 1970, and
Mhm.
they gradually it got uglier and uglier. The police now wear uniforms that look like riot gear. They're regular uniform, but they're not armed all the time. That's up for debate right now. They're trying to be allowed to do it. But we had the first really bad armed robbery was here in town. Was a bank robbery, and they shot one of the policemen. So that shocked everyone. And then, of course, we had Utøy in when was that? uh, 2012, was it just? Try to keep it out of my mind. July 22nd, which was our 9/11, where we had teenagers on an island. It was a political camp for the Labour Party. So kids between the ages of, I think, 15 and 19. And a right-wing fanatic set off bombs as a what do you call it? As a diversion, and then went out to the island and picked off kids one after the other. And it shook Norway a lot. That was just something I wouldn't have dreamt of. I had one son had already moved to London by then, my oldest, and my youngest was in school, but he didn't. He'd been invited to go, but didn't. It wasn't his political party, so he hadn't gone. But it was very close to home, and not something I thought I would ever have experienced in Norway. It was. I had everything up until then. Norway felt very safe and cozy, with one murder a year in the entire country, maybe two. But things are changing for whatever reason.
Are they changing politically as well as here and in other countries where there's a rise of authoritarianism and hate against certain groups? And
It's very complicated here because Norway was occupied by Nazis during World War II, so they killed a lot of people. However, before World War II, before they were occupied, Norway had already given up a lot of the Jews to the Nazis, had sent them off. So that anti-Semitism has been here, as it is everywhere in the world. And there was a time when I first got here, there was a huge romanticism of nationality, and everybody was everybody talked about the resistance, the heroes of the resistance, book after book after film after film, and didn't talk about anything else that happened. And we have always had, I'm saying we now. Sometimes it surprises me. We have always had the far right extreme politicians. There's a far right party, but they are not, equivalent to the party in Germany. They're not that far right, but they are right, and they have had individuals who have been very far to the right. So I don't see that happening. But on the train last week, I saw a woman wearing a Make America Great hat and a two-gender T-shirt carrying a some anti-Palestinian flag on the train going into town, which confused me. I didn't yell at her, but I did say quite loudly, she looked like a billboard for hate. And I have more conservative students than I used to have. I teach at a performing high school, performing arts, performing and visual arts, which tends to be liberal, always has always been liberal, but we have more students on the right. So the youth, I don't know what's coming up.
Okay.
It scares me. That's why I feel I'm editing an anthology against for poetry against authoritarianism, because it's not an American issue. What America does, the rest of the world watches and emulates. We're going to see it. So it concerns me a lot.
So in the face of that, getting back to focusing on the good stuff, because because that
Mhm.
stuff is what is affecting the mental health of so many of us here in the States, and you too, and so many other countries are shifting in that direction now to some degree. And at least here for me, as a highly sensitive person and an empath who cares deeply about the suffering, even of people I've never met, um, it's overwhelming. And I do protect myself by limiting my exposure to the news. And I'm still informed about major events, but I don't need to know all the ins and outs. I don't need to hear all the speculation about how much worse things are going to be, et cetera, et cetera. But yet I still want to know enough to be an advocate and to help those who are being harmed. But yet maintaining my own mental health in the midst of that is a constant challenge. And so the walks in the park help, and having support groups of kindred spirits helps, and taking concrete actions helps. But I'm just wondering if you have other ways that help you cope with just the constant onslaught of horrible things that are happening everywhere.
Uh, One thing is expressive writing, where you sit down, set a timer for 10 minutes, and dump it all out and don't go back to it again. There's no purpose except to just put it into words and get it out. I find that helps me a lot. Um, and this idea of surfing, that accept what's not in my control, and uh, do sounds like the serenity prayer, do what I can, what I can.
Hmm.
Um, but that also to realize I don't have control about what happens to my oldest kid, who is a gay man in England, and my youngest, who is in the military here. I no control, and I have to accept that and just think about, okay, now last time I saw him, we talked about this, and he smiled, and I know he's doing this. I wonder how this is going, and I know it's there, but I have to look at the whole picture, or I guess not look at the whole picture. Maybe it's the idea of that frame of a snapshot. I know the train's there, but
Right.
right now I'm
But
just going to look at
choose
this
to
right
focus
now.
more on the pretty things than the ugly things. And for
Yeah,
me,
no,
it's
well,
also about adding to the world's beauty in whatever small way, like I mentioned, picking up the trash at the park,
yes,
versus just kind of adding to the ugliness by countering hate with more hate, and demonizing them the same way they demonize certain groups of people. And that again is a challenge for me. I'm not claiming I'm always great at it, but
yeah,
I'm trying to focus more on condemning actions versus people, and being clear that I believe these words and these actions are totally unacceptable, inhumane, et cetera, et cetera. But that person undoubtedly has someone in their lives that loves them, or a pet they take care of, or something good, even if I can't see it. But more importantly, like I said, focusing on the majority of people who are still kind, and who do random small acts of kindness every day, and some do really big things too. And trying to highlight them more than dwell on the bad people doing bad things, kind of thing. um, and the other thing that I do, you mentioned writing. I journal every morning, and that is often just a dump. But then I also journal at night, and part of it is it's a different kind of journaling. I just make lists. And so I list among those 5 things that I'm grateful for that happened that day. And they're very small things often, and I try to make them different every day, except for my husband is always the first thing. We're celebrating our 34th anniversary next week. But
yay,
all of the others are, like, I'm grateful for the heron I saw at the park. I'm grateful for the piece of chocolate cake I enjoyed for dessert. Every little thing that I can think of. I'm grateful that I played my favorite song today and danced to it, or whatever.
yeah. I Are you there? Are you there still?
Yeah, sorry, my for whatever reason. Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
there
for
you
whatever reason, my phone was being difficult. Um,
are.
but anyway, yeah.
No,
So just the little things that I'm grateful for, And it also, over time, has helped me, because I know I want to, be writing that gratitude list that night, notice things throughout the
Yeah.
day. Some people call them glimmers. And I've discovered that even on my worst day, there are moments of joy and beauty. And I can choose to either dwell on all the overwhelming, stressful, bad stuff, or I can let myself enjoy and remember and fully savor those moments that are beautiful and joyful and that remind me that there's still so much goodness and beauty in the world.
Mm. Yeah, I think so. I think then that's another thing. I am fortunate to have the job I have because my students create things. They show me work, and unfortunately I have to grade it, which is the only bad thing about it. Because I don't want to. I just want to be with them and think, "Wow, look what you did. That's amazing. Thank you." And um, that knowing that these young people, because a lot of times they get blamed for things, are really quite amazing. We had our national day on the 17th, and that's a day where everyone gets a little bit tipsy. And um, yeah, I was in a bathroom, and these two teenagers came out and just started complimenting me. Just so sweet and so sincere. And I, it just was, see, this is who these people are. These young people are great.
Yeah.
That, to remember that and to know that, yes, we're surfing through this really difficult time, but this is not the end of history. That
Right.
I really don't believe that. I think that too many generations have said that this is the end of history.
Yeah,
This
that's
is,
another thing that helps me actually, is to look back at history and to read the words of people like Martin Luther King Jr. and Gandhi and Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and the Dalai Lama and other inspirational people, including some whose names aren't known, who are just ordinary people most have never heard of, but people who made a huge difference and who knew that what they were doing they might not realize the good results of in their lifetime, and they might even be murdered for what they're doing, but it was still worth it. And they're just so inspirational to me, and also, like you said, a reminder that there have been really dark periods before, and yet somehow we survived and found ways to improve. And so, even though it feels like we're backtracking on a lot of that progress now, um, there's still hope, and there are still plenty of us who don't like what's happening and are doing what we can to counter it with love and support people harmed by it. And so, yeah, I think that helps a lot.
yeah, I think that incident on the train, I was shocked to realize that was the first time in my entire life I've ever had the obligation of my privilege, that I am a straight, cisgender, white woman of a certain age,
Mm-hmm.
and I could speak up to that woman without fear, because it wasn't fear. It was fear I was feeling for the community,
Right.
but not personal fear. I'm not
Yes.
afraid she's going to hurt me. And that I felt the obligation was that those people who are too afraid to speak up, I need to say something. I need to um, uh, not to appropriate their pain or their suffering at all, but to know I have a position that has an obligation, that I have to speak up. Um,
Absolutely. When I first um, gave up or was forced out of my career as a pastor for speaking up about those things and advocating, I wrote some articles for an independent publication in Texas called the Texas Observer that were about why Christians must denounce Christian nationalism and some like official party platform things of the Texas Republican Party, and I linked to their website that were kind of buried. It was like a 54-page document, and so a lot of people didn't realize just how explicit they were about their plans to decimate social services, do things to immigrants and LGBTQ people, etc.
mm,
But like you said, that I know that I'm privileged because I too am white, cisgender, heterosexual, and too old to get pregnant. So for all of those reasons, I am safe in a way that many others are not right now. And granted, just being an ally, especially of the LGBTQ community in Texas, can endanger me potentially, but nevertheless, nowhere near to the degree of trauma and potential harm to people in that community. And I have friends in that community and family members. And so, yeah, I do feel that need. And it's again, the balance between protecting my own mental health and not responding to hate with more hate, and yet also not being silent about this stuff or pretending it's okay or denying that it's happening.
Yeah. And but doesn't that also make you feel good that
It
you
does,
know where
yes.
you stand? And that's a
Yes.
good and the bad to
Yes,
have
it
that.
does help. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Um, and it helps connect me with kindred spirits and remind me that, we're not alone in this, and we're not even the minority. We are the majority, and it's just this vocal minority of people um, that are supportive of or participating in the worst of what's happening, and that we're not powerless, even though it often feels and seems that way. That even the small acts of kindness we do, um, and the ways that we support each other, um, matter. They make the world a better place, or even our little small part of the world a little bit better. That's still important. And it's important. There's a wonderful story about during the Vietnam War, a single individual who stood outside the White House every single day with a candle protesting the Vietnam War. And he was asked by a reporter, why are you doing this? Clearly, it makes no difference. And his answer was, I'm not doing this to change what they do. I'm doing it so that what's happening doesn't change me. And I
Oh,
thought that was so powerful.
that is.
Just remember that we're not just advocating for other people. We're being true to ourselves. We're honoring our values and our integrity, and not letting them be compromised in order to feel safer or be accepted. Or
Mm, yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. That's yeah, I expect it can't be that easy in Texas. And
no, and sadly, what's happening nationally was already happening in Texas before this. And um, yeah, Texas is not a safe place, particularly for the LGBTQ community, and of course for immigrants right now, and even for teachers, school librarians, school counselors, because our legislature is decimating funding for public schools, and banning books left and right. The school boards are, and all kinds of things. So it is very difficult. But at the same time, I could flee to, if I had the financial ability and could meet the residency requirements, I could just flee to another country, or I
mm,
could move to a state that is more heavily democratic or LGBTQ friendly, whatever, more aligned with my values. But part of me feels this responsibility to be in an area where there's a need for advocacy and for people to feel supported and reminded that not everyone hates them and is targeting them, basically. Um, so yeah, it's hard. And also, to be completely honest, I don't do cold weather well. And so the states I would choose to live in for political reasons, I'm not willing to deal with the snow and to scrape ice off my windshield every morning in winter, et cetera, et cetera.
oh, no, it's hard. Yeah, I have a little bit of survivor's guilt. Um, when 9/11 happened, the weirdest thing, people in Norway talked to me as though I was an American, and people in America talked to me as though I was a Norwegian. Didn't know what they were going through because I wasn't an
Yeah.
American. Um, and that was very interesting. So now I actually did have to give up my citizenship to protect my pension here.
Uh,
Um, at that time, I couldn't have both citizenships.
so you're
So
now a Norwegian citizen? You meant you had to give up your US? Yeah.
yeah, I had to. And that I wasn't able to vote in the last few elections. Um, that was, I felt bad about that. I felt
Mhm.
really bad about that. That I I yeah, I feel survivor's guilt.
Hmm.
I'm not in the thick of it right now. Um, Although I see it and I'm afraid of it and I'm afraid what it will do to the rest of the world. I definitely don't feel it the way American citizens feel it right
Yeah.
now. That's true.
Yeah. Even those of us who were fully prepared for much of the horror that would happen with this change in administration, the speed with which it's happened and the degree to which other unanticipated things, like access to every American's financial and medical records that have been hacked, and mass layoffs at even like public safety organizations, and health funding that's causing lives to be lost now. There's just so much more that I think we didn't see coming, that's hard to cope with, and that is just so overwhelming on a daily basis and contributes to the fear and the sense of helplessness and powerlessness. But again, that makes it all the more important for us to connect with each other and find kindred spirits and find little ways where we do feel empowered and we do bring moments of joy to people. I've discovered even having conversations with the cashier at the grocery store, or the bagger, just to like acknowledge that they are humans, they aren't just servants, if you will.
Yeah.
um, Matters. They brighten up when, because they're standard. They have to say to everyone, how are you, and sound like they mean it. But they're always surprised when I say back to them, and how are you, or how has your day been going, or I notice how busy it is, and like today you must be tired. It's so busy. Has it been this way all day? Little things um, just matter. And I've always been one of those people that strangers kind of instinctively trust and confide in. So it's very interesting. I can be in an airport or a laundromat or a grocery store, and I don't know, I just give off that vibe and attract people who tell me deeply personal things, and just feel better that they were able to have someone listen to them. Um, so yeah, I think there are all kinds of ways we can make a difference that it's easy to forget about or decide, are so little in the face of the overwhelming other stuff. Like, what difference does it make? But it still matters.
Yeah. I think there's people who actually live with war in their communities. They don't live and breathe it every second of the day. They do have laughter or they don't survive.
Yes. Mhm.
But that Frankel book, right? Is
Yes.
that?
Man, search
Yeah.
for meaning. That immediately popped in my head before you even said it. Yes.
Yeah. But I think that's key. If I don't go around cracking jokes at all, and I have a rather wry sense of humor. But that's what keeps my husband and I together, is humor, and gallows humor. And
Mhm.
um, I think we have to allow ourselves that. But
Absolutely. One good aspect of the things that are happening now is all of the mass protest in response to it, and in particular the creativity of some of the protest signs that they hold, and
I've
that
seen
can
them.
make me laugh and bring me joy. um, so yeah, just find joy wherever and however we can, and savor those moments. And I try to remember that the bad stuff is not all there is to the world, and I can choose to look for and celebrate the good.
Yeah, that's how I feel. I'm not so sure we can always find joy, but I think we can always find good. It's, it depends on what one puts into the word joy. Uh,
Yeah, there's actually a wonderful book and movie that's a week-long conversation the late Archbishop Desmond Tutu had with the Dalai Lama about joy. And both of them, of course, have been through unbelievably horrible circumstances in their lives and their countries, um, and so it was all the more powerful to see them laughing together and joking and talking about the importance of finding joy, and that it's necessary to have joy in order to be able to do the more difficult work of advocacy and supporting people who are suffering greatly. Um, but yeah, it's again easier said than done, especially for me. I tend to be very serious and, like you, have kind of gallows humor when I have humor at all. But um,
Yeah.
luckily, my husband is much more light and humorous than I am, and he can make me laugh. And even just when he starts laughing, that makes me laugh because he can tell a joke that and make himself laugh, and I just love that. Even if I don't think it's funny, it's wonderful to see him laughing at it.
Yeah.
Well, it is slightly over an hour, and as I say every time, I feel like I could continue the conversation for many more hours, but I
Too.
try to keep them to about an hour. Um, so I'm sure you will share the recording, and I certainly will on my page later today. And Substack automatically puts it up in the app as soon as we're done, I believe. So thank you to those who joined us live, and to those who may catch this later. One last note, I am going to be leading a book study soon of Glennon Doyle's new book, We Can Do Hard Things. And so I'll be sharing more about that in the post underneath this video recording that I shared later today. But it's going to start in just a few weeks, and I'm looking forward to it. And we're going to have some live Zoom gatherings as well as the Substack chat, so that we can have more interaction and see each other's faces and talk, and not just have it be, written back and forth stuff. I really value the interactions and conversations about things that matter. And so thank you to Ren, and
Thank
to
you.
all of my previous guests, and all of the guests I will have on in the future, and all of you who are watching and chatting. Have a great rest of your day, and thank you all. Bye.
Bye.